Starstruck.
Tower Blue, 650 volt, tip off. 50, 27 left, for the land, 230 is 20. 29 right, turn ground sign. 707, 270 heading south, 15, 16 meters, 2 up ahead. 35, yard day, so. Guy 74, Tango Whiskey, 26 for 3000, 140 on that. 823 is 1800 for 3, 4, and American left, heading 660.
I got for I think a Christmas, birthday or Christmas, Peter Callie's boyfriend. I got it was a snowcat, a Lego snowcat, one of the Technics.
Oh yeah, I know which one you're talking about. Yeah.
And my brother, with his unique sense of humor, is like, you know what you need to do is you need to make a little Jeremy Renner.
Oh,
I was like,
that's so funny. My buddy said that too, and he's like, too soon. I'm just like, oh, that's messed up. Because you can get the little Hawkeye minifig, from a Marvel set, and oh man, yeah. God, I think he mentioned that early on too. Like it was not a matter of months after that event. So it's like Jesus, and they came out with that snowcat. Yeah, that's so funny.
Alrighty, we're gonna pretend like we didn't do this. All right. Hello and welcome to Joyride. I am Jared Brandon Flandy, and
I am Adam Mendenhall,
and this is the podcast where we talk about vehicles, transportation, and adventure. How you doing, Adam?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Not too bad. And I'd like to say we're back. Thank you, listeners, for continuing to listen to us. We had a little bit of a longer season gap than we usually do, but part of that is other than just preparing for this season, we've been working on a lot of other different stuff too. We're trying to expand the Joyride brand, you can say. At the moment, we're working on more short form video content, so stuff like on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, that sort of thing. But aside from other things, our main goal really is to eventually expand this show into a TV show as well, right, Adam?
Indeed.
So if there's any producers listening who are looking for new content or material, we are willing to deal. But, excuse me, we're coming in hot on this one here. So for this new season, we're going to just start right off the bat with a story episode. And I was trying to think of something that's got a little sizzle appeal to it, okay? So, Adam, this might be familiar to you, but we'll see if you pick up on anything, okay?
All right.
So the title of this is Catch Me If You Can, Frank Abagnale. So you might think this is where you already know where this is going, but you will probably be surprised, all right? So, to start, the wheels of the great airliner bounced its way down the runway with bursts of smoke and tires screaming until the aircraft finally made full contact with the tarmac. As the plane was taxiing, all the passengers sat in their seats, waiting for the aircraft to come to a complete stop. Well, all except one passenger. This young con man, who managed to evade arrest by making his way to the bathroom and escaping through the toilet.
The toilet of all things.
Yeah, so he had some business to do, you could say, in more ways than one.
Yeah, more than just number two.
He removed the toilet and slithered his way to the plane's fuselage until he popped out of the airplane and onto the runway so he could make his dash to freedom. Or so how he tells the story. This young conman was Frank William Abagnale Jr. During his criminal career, he had claimed that he had impersonated an airline pilot, a doctor, a lawyer, a professor, and had cashed over $2.5 million in fraudulent checks.
Oh my God.
Now, before we continue, I'd like to remind all of our listeners that a majority of this episode is only based upon alleged claims, and as a result, this show will leave you to come to your own conclusions. I don't want to misinform our listeners. We're not into doing that. So, While perpetrating all of these crimes, he additionally played a continual cat and mouse game with the FBI until he was finally arrested in 1969 in Montpellier, a city in southern France, nestled on the French Riviera. I went there when I was like 12.
Whoa.
There was all sorts of stuff. At the time, France was like not too big on like cleaning up the streets. So there's a lot better now. But it's a very nice city. It's like I said, it's right on the Riviera. It's that intense sun. It's something right out of a painting.
That sounds scenic.
Yeah. What's even more amazing and possibly unbelievable was that he did all of this between the ages of 17 and 20. What were you doing between the ages of 17 and 20?
I was getting ready for college then.
That was during the Great Recession, so I was just wondering if there was going to be a life afterward.
Yeah,
me.
no doubt.
I think I mentioned that in one of these stories before. Indeed, Frank's life story has become nothing short of legendary. The public first became aware of his exploits when his autobiography was published in 1980, which was entitled Catch Me If You Can. Frank's story became even more known when it was finally made into a Steven Spielberg film starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hanks, which is probably where... Have you seen the movie?
Yes, I have. Yep.
Yep. A Broadway play has been produced as well. After Frank paid his debt to society, he has routinely claimed he has become a reformed member of society and is now considered to be one of the world's foremost experts regarding financial fraud. A slew of journalists and other crime experts have come forth over the years to refute Frank's story, however, and the evidence they have discovered does make many of Frank's claims either to seem embellished, if not completely fabricated.
Interesting.
With that said, I will nonetheless tell Frank's side of the story first. Frank William Abagnale Jr. was born in the Bronx on April 27, 1948, but grew up in New Rochelle, New York. His father, Frank Sr., was Italian-American, while his mother, Paula, was French-Algerian. It goes without saying, if you're born in the Bronx, you have to have an Italian-American parent of some variety.
It seems like a prerequisite, that's for sure.
Now, we worked with a guy from the Bronx.
We did. Authentic.
It's
Yes.
Everything he walked. It's like he stepped out of a Martin Scorsese movie.
Exactly. Truly did.
So, his parents met during World War II while his father was serving abroad. The family was upper middle class, and Frank and his two siblings experienced a stable upbringing. Frank's dad owned a stationery store, which made him somewhat well connected with other successful New York businessmen. You know, you can't order stuff online, so the stationery stores are very common at this point. And everybody is anybody that needs stationery.
Yeah, the era of, again, pre-internet, brick and mortar was everything.
Yeah, especially like financial or business people. So it's kind of an ideal networking occupation to be in, interestingly enough. Let's see here. So yeah, which made him somewhat well connected with other successful New York businessmen. The siblings' stable life. Almost said sable life. It's got little weasel things in it. The siblings' stable life would come to an end when Frank's mother divorced his dad when Frank was about 16 due to his frequent absences for his job. The children were crushed, and so was Frank's dad, who tried to unsuccessfully reconcile with his wife for the rest of his life. Frank decided to live with his father, and by the time he was about 16, he was already 6 feet tall and weighed 170 pounds. You and me know that story.
Indeed we do.
Consequently, most people assumed he was older and started referring to him as Sir, which happened to me, too. So when I was 15, I was being called Sir.
You can tell the confusion on some people's, in their eyes. Going, should I ID this guy or not?
This gave Frank the ability to go on business trips with his dad into the most fashionable bars in New York City. And at the time, I think the drinking ages, it varied between the states, but it was generally just 18 at the time. I think. Yeah, I don't think it became federally 21 till like early 80s.
Somewhere in there, yeah.
Yes, for the rest of you in the world, you can't drink until you're 21, a full-grown adult.
At least in this country.
This country.
Oh, Canada. Elsewhere.
In these bars, Frank watched some of the most powerful men in the city conduct deals, and this is where he claims he started learning negotiating skills. Around this time, Frank decided he was going to pursue a new path in life, and that was a life of crime.
What a path to pursue.
I guess you can't understand what you're not capable of. So
That's true.
Yeah. This was a strange choice for a kid from a middle-class family, but perhaps the divorce was really too much for him to handle. Frank started his new life with petty crimes such as shoplifting, but he soon became bored of this. He moved on to a more elaborate scheme by taking his dad's credit card to a local gas station, where he started buying things with his dad's credit card. He managed to convince the attendants to reimburse him with cash, and Frank would then give them their end of the cut to sweeten the deal.
Oh my gosh. What a racket that
Yeah,
is.
slippery, very slippery. This is my favorite part. For some reason, he didn't think of this. The scheme worked for a while until Frank Sr. got the credit card bill.
Oh.
It totaled
Inevitable, but yeah.
it totaled about $3,400, which is about $34,000 in today's money. Little did Frank know that his dad was starting to have serious financial troubles, so this did not go down as the little joke he may have been hoping for.
I bet not.
As a result, Frank's parents began to get more and more frustrated with him, so when Frank was 16, he decided to run away from home by hopping aboard a train to make it his way to New York City. Well, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere.
That's the old lingo.
That's probably what he's thinking. He did not speak to either of his parents ever again. Life in the big city was not as easy as Frank thought it would be, though. Since he dropped out of high school, he had little education, and the odd jobs he was able to get were not enough to make ends meet. Frank came up with a clever solution to his problems, though. What do you think it was?
Oh, I'm thinking more fraud, perhaps.
Yeah, but it's nothing really grand. His new bold plan was to start writing bad checks any chance he got. Which, back then, you could probably get away with a while because it's not done electronically for the most part, so you're not going to know that the account's overdrawn for a while. So
Yeah, there's none of those safety precautions put in place. Yep.
So our budding con man, though, eventually came to the conclusion he should probably leave town. He knew he was going to get caught sooner or later since his checking account was obscenely overdrawn by this point. With this lesson learned, Frank knew he had to level up. Sure, you can write bad checks, but as a teenage kid, this would only take him so far. He knew he needed to be more older and more respectable. With a bit of arts and crafts skills, he modified his driver's license to make it appear he was 26 and not 16. I'm guessing it's not laminated or anything like we have now, so...
Yeah, it had to be some type of high-quality paper or something.
Yeah, a little
you could manipulate.
Pencil, a little eraser,
Yep.
or white out, something like that. In terms of a respectable identity, he chose the coolest and most chic profession of the 1960s, an airline pilot.
Oh.
Which is pretty hot. I mean, that is considered pretty cool. I mean, the only other thing that's probably as cool is basically being an ad man. You know, you're either Don Draper or you're an airline pilot.
Well, sure. I mean, the glamour of the Pan Am era, that certainly was.
Well, you segued perfectly into this. So, not only did he choose to impersonate a pilot, he chose to impersonate a pilot who worked for the most glamorous and respected airline in the world. Pan American Airlines, or better known as Pan Am. Which I've talked to some older people that, flew around in the 60s and 70s, and they're like, that was the airline you wanted to be on.
Yeah, it seems like back then there was a distinct gap between that and just a lot of the other common standard airlines you'd otherwise pick. I mean, the luxury and amenities were, considerable.
What's sad is that even probably the mediocre airlines were probably far better than we have now.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I bet.
It's just
I
a
wouldn't be
Greyhound
surprised.
with wings. If it's not a Boeing, then it's just,
Yeah,
it's a radio flyer with wings.
pretty much.
At this time, airlines were not exactly new, but they had certainly matured by featuring jet-powered airplanes with better amenities than had ever been offered before. In other words, the jet age began, and flying obtained a glamorous allure that created an entire new class of people, known as the jet set. So, Pan Am was already an early customer of some of the best-known jetliners ever built. These aircraft would include the Boeing 707, which Pan Am put into operation in 1958. The airline would also operate the Boeing 727 and the Douglas DC-8 and DC-10. Pan Am would make history, however, by being one of the first airlines to utilize the fabled Boeing 747 in 1970. Have you ever been on a 747?
Nope, never flown on one.
I
Nope.
never have. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure when those first started being retired, but I always just flew on the single-decker planes.
Same
Whatever you want to call them. When Frank decided to impersonate a pilot, these would have been some of the planes he would have taken on his conman joyrides on. Frank managed to procure a pilot's uniform by calling Pan Am headquarters, claiming to be a co-pilot who had lost his uniform. Do you think they wanted a more elaborate cover story other than that?
I'm thinking so.
They said it was not a problem, and they even told him where to procure a new one, which he paid for by using a fake employee number.
Kind of shocking, they didn't. There wasn't any further investigation, no interrogation. Just that's good enough for us.
Yeah, I mean, this is the 60s. We're not, this isn't the 1860s by any means, but, there's some electronic stuff, not a lot. So I think what's partially going on here is you just have to be more trusting in general.
It sounds like it again. This is, we're so used to the post 9/11 world and Homeland Security and all that stuff, and boy, how things were different.
So Frank also posed as a high school student who was writing an article about being a pilot for the school newspaper. So he interviewed pilots to learn more about the aviation industry. With this knowledge and his new uniform, Frank was flying for free by deadheading routine Pan Am flights. My mom used to be a flight attendant, and deadheading is they're riding kind of side saddle up in the cockpit with the other two pilots. So when he was ever offered the controls to the plane, he simply said he had a few drinks beforehand, which of course quickly settled the matter. Which is surprising for the 60s. I think back then they was like, that's fine. Just take
Oh, there you go. You just had a few. Okay.
Yeah, you want me to mix one for you? Well,
Oh my. Yeah. Not far off from the real truth, I'm sure.
Frank soon started conning Pan Am in other ways besides free flights. From working at his dad's stationery store, he had learned such things like the behaviors of paper and ink. With this knowledge, Frank was no longer writing bad checks, but had started forging them instead.
Next level now.
Now he's moving next level. He'd even buy toy airplanes and remove the Pan Am decal from the tail wing of the toy planes and apply them to the forged checks to make them appear more authentic. He's taking a sticker off a toy. That's all it's taking.
Well, but how resourceful for what he had access to. That's very clever. Yeah.
Frank enjoyed the benefits of being a fake airline pilot for a bit, but soon he caught the attention of the authorities because some things he's faking it and making it, but other things are just not quite lining up. No. Frank was questioned about his identity, but he did not cave and continued to claim his name was Frank Williams, and even provided ID to prove it, which was fake, of course. Frank was so well liked among his coworkers that some of them vouched for him by confirming he was a real-life co-pilot. As a result, Frank was free to go. Even for Frank, this was too much of a close call, so he thought it best to change fake careers for a while. He moved to Atlanta, where he befriended a medical doctor who was living in the same housing complex that Frank had moved into. They quickly became friends by sharing stories of their, quote, sexual conquests. It's a weird opener.
Yeah. Not totally conventional, even for the era.
I don't even think back then that's conventional, but okay. Aside from these claims, and mind you, he's like 17, so maybe that's... Aside from these claims, Frank convinced the doctor that he was a burned-out pediatrician. As usual, the doctor believed Frank and even let him come to the hospital where he worked at so Frank could observe medicine. So he's like, okay, I found another angle here. I just got to study up enough.
Shadow this guy enough, and here we go.
Due to Frank's easygoing personality, he became well liked by the hospital staff and was allowed to go to the hospital library to read medical books. In a short amount of time, Frank was offered a job at the hospital to supervise the interns. So he's learned enough to fake past being a fake doctor. So if Frank was asked a question he could not answer, though, he just deflected it by cracking jokes. So, like, I don't know if they're asked, like, if his heart pressure's at this level. It's like, I don't know. It's certainly pumping to me. I don't know what he did. Then he just walk off or something.
Yeah, but he'd spin that into, then they forget all about the question to begin with, right?
Yeah. If, let's see here. Even though Frank was supervising the interns, in reality, he was younger than most of them since he was still a teenager. He must be older looking for a teenager.
I'm guessing so, yeah.
Frank's career as a fake doctor would be short-lived, however. He decided to call it quits when a young child was brought in with a broken leg. Frank's conscience finally got the better of him since he knew he did not have the medical training to actually heal people. Because he's not a doctor. After living in California for a bit, Frank ended up in Louisiana and got back together with an old flight attendant girlfriend. This time, our young con man convinced her that besides his flight career, he had also managed to earn a law degree from Harvard. She believed him.
Well, he must be a good salesman.
I guess. I mean, how I would go, how do you have time to learn both of those?
Exactly.
So, but I guess it's not like now, once again, you have the sum of all known human knowledge in your pocket. And if you want to ask anything, you could just type it in real fast. You can't do this now. So I think it's back to that. You just probably went with things more. Not only did she believe him, she also introduced him to a lawyer friend of hers to help Frank get a job in the district attorney's office. The DA office said to him to get a job, they only needed his transcripts from Harvard, and that he had to pass the state bar exam. Frank most likely forged his transcripts because he didn't even finish high school. But he also claimed he did not cheat on the bar exam, but instead studied for it and actually passed.
Wow.
So Frank got a job. I don't know if you can even call him a fake lawyer because he's technically licensed. But so he did get a job, but it soon came to an end when Frank had bumped into an actual Harvard graduate at work. So it's like, yeah, hey, you ever get real, tired walking around that particular quad? He's never been there. He doesn't know.
He wouldn't know.
He doesn't know. To avoid answering questions he could not answer, Frank boogied again, and this time to Utah. It's a strange place to go.
Yeah, it seems a little odd.
Did he want some Jell-O or something? He took a new job as a fake professor, but he did not do this for long either, since he was now wanted in 4 continents. Because of this, he thought it best to stay on the move. With this in mind, Frank returned to his favorite bullshit job, being a fake pilot. For this stint of his career, he wanted some help this time. Frank started visiting college campuses as part of a fabricated recruitment program. He then proceeded to recruit and, quote, examine the most beautiful women that signed up. Using these women as camouflage, he went back to flying around the globe for free. So he's picked all these really good-looking women to be, they don't know this, fake flight attendants. And so he's surrounding himself with them. And everyone's paying attention to them and not him. So he's literally using them as eye candy camouflage.
Oh, that's ultra camouflage.
Yeah.
I mean, what a brilliant tactic.
Yeah. Frank took the ladies on a promotional tour of Europe, and all on Pan Am's dime. During this time, Frank has claimed that he cashed $300,000 worth of forged Pan Am checks, which would be over $2 million in today's money. Whew. With this haul of dirty money, Frank finally decided it was time to go into retirement. His plan was to become a screenwriter, under an assumed name, I presume, and settling in Montpellier, France. Frank ended up finally being arrested while he was staying in Montpellier in 1969. He was not immediately extradited back to the United States, but instead spent some time in a French prison. I wonder what French prison's like.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I mean, do you have to get the baguette? And I'm sure the guards will light your cigarettes.
Something there.
With time, the FBI had arranged his extradition, and he was escorted back home via airplane. Frank, of course, did not leave the airplane in the conventional manner, but instead made his exit via the airplane's toilet.
Of course. Would we expect anything less? Yeah.
Frank was on the lam for a handful of days, but he was eventually caught at a Montreal airport. After this, he was sent to a detention center in Atlanta to await trial. While waiting in jail, Frank convinced the prison guards he was actually an FBI agent who was deep undercover.
Convinced the prison guards that he was an FBI agent. That's a stretch.
Do you think they bought it?
Wow.
Consequently, he received much better treatment than his fellow inmates. Frank bid his time until the guards were completely convinced that he was an actual FBI agent. Once this was done, Frank told the guards that he had important information that he had to deliver to his superiors, and it was so important he could only deliver the info in person. The guards thought this made complete sense and simply let Frank pass through the prison gates.
Right on out.
1-800-idiots.
To say the least. I'm just going to walk out through the front gates.
He walked out. Frank stayed on the lam for a month until, just out of sheer bad luck, he was recognized outside the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York City by 2 hot dog eating detectives, which is the most New York thing to ever happen.
That is one of the most classic New York scenes ever.
Hey, could you put some more ketchup on that?
Yeah, some onion on that.
Put the onion on there. That's good. Okay. And 2, not 1, 2. Hey, it's that guy we've been looking for. So, while on trial, Frank pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 12 years in a federal prison in 1971. 5 years into his sentence, FBI agent Joe Shea, who the Tom Hanks character was largely based upon in the movie, organized for Frank to serve the remainder of his sentence working with the FBI to catch other conmen. Once Frank had fulfilled this arrangement, he started his consultancy company, Abagnale and Associates. Frank's story would first become part of popular culture when his biography, written with the help of a co-writer, was released in 1980. Frank would then settle down with his wife and 3 sons and continues to live a quiet life in South Carolina. Or so he has claimed.
Or so he has claimed, yes.
Regarding his version of events, journalists such as author Alan Logan have recently discovered evidence that calls into question many of Frank's claims. Well, with this in mind, let's examine some of the events that probably happened instead. So, Frank was born in the Bronx and grew up in New Rochelle, and the rest of the early part of his life is most likely true. Some small differences start to occur here, however. For example, his parents had already been separated for some time before they divorced when Frank was 15, not 16. He did go to live with his father, but Frank Sr. had already remarried by this point, so Frank had a new stepmother as well. The truck and gas station scheme also probably happened. Consequently, his mother even threatened to put him into a home for troubled boys. Which
that was always the threat back then.
The most old-timey, the troubled boys. Mm-hmm. To avoid this, Frank would leave home at 16, but instead of running to New York, Frank joined the Navy instead, which he probably didn't even have to fake anything. Back then, they just, if you lied about your age, you went, sounds good to me, come on in. He ended up being discharged 3 months later in February of 1965. 2 weeks later, Frank was most likely arrested for the first time by being charged with petty larceny. In March of 1965, Frank thought it would be fun to impersonate a police officer. He ventured to a Mount Vernon, New York apartment building and told one of the residents that he was there to investigate her daughter.
That's a little weird.
Yes, so unlike the other version of events, she did not call 1-800-I'm-stupid. She was, interestingly enough, suspicious. And she reported him to the actual police. He was arrested and booked for vagrancy and reportedly was committed to a psychiatric institute that same day for observation. So they think he's a nut, basically.
Oh, my God.
That same year, Frank stole a Ford Mustang from his father's neighbor. The police did catch up with Frank, but only until he reached Eureka, California.
Jeez, he had made it a ways.
He made it all. He can't go any further. He had paid for his cross-country joyride by stealing blank checks from a family business located on the Bronx River Parkway. The FBI eventually caught up with Frank, and a newspaper article featured a photo of him in the car along with one of the FBI agents that caught him. He's just that cocky, basically. So Frank was sent back to New York City, and I couldn't find out the reason for this, but the case ended up just being dropped.
How do you drop
I
a
don't
case?
know.
How does that not become a
He got
priority?
out of it. He got out of it.
Wow.
Like he does with a lot of things. He keeps getting free passes, and he's not learning anything.
Yeah, nothing sticks.
So Frank was then released into the custody of his father. As we can see in this version of events, Frank did stay in contact with his parents, but Frank did not stay with his father for long, however, and this is when he started posing as an airline pilot, most likely. But he probably did not fly the millions of miles for free as he had claimed, and there's no evidence that his recruitment program happened either. So if he did do it, he didn't do it for very long. Frank's claims of posing as a pediatrician have also been challenged, if not entirely debunked. This is mostly because Alan Logan had discovered records from the New York State Archives that Frank was not at Cobb General Hospital during his time, but instead was being held prisoner at the Great Meadow Prison in Comstock, New York. It was kind of hard to be two places at once.
Yeah, that is.
Mm-hmm. The only refuted evidence that Frank impersonated a doctor was when he visited the University of Arizona campus, where he claimed he was a pilot and a doctor. But that was pretty much about it. What? It's kind of a lame claim.
Yeah.
There's virtually no evidence that Frank impersonated a lawyer either, and there are no state records that he was ever a member of the Louisiana bar. He also at one time befriended a minister in Louisiana and said he had a degree in sociology, but the minister was suspicious, and Frank was soon found out. To add to Frank's woes, a journalist also challenged Frank on his period of posing as a professor at Brigham Young's University. Frank said he could not recall the details, but the journalist showed him a passage in Frank's book where Frank clearly stated he impersonated a sociology professor.
Oh my gosh.
So Frank responded by saying he may have just been a guest speaker.
Just a guest speaker.
Yeah. So, additionally, there are no records that Frank escaped a penitentiary in Georgia, since he was being held in a county jail instead. This is starting to sound more like Pulp Fiction than Ocean's 11.
Yeah, it is. The Leonardo DiCaprio version's starting to fade. The color's starting to fade on that right now.
In fact, Logan had found evidence that Frank was incarcerated at the ages of 17 and 20, which is also the same period that Frank claimed was his most active period, making a lot of his story just not credible in that case. Frank has routinely said he was only arrested once in Montpelier, but public records have indicated he was actually arrested multiple times in the states of New York, California, Massachusetts, Louisiana, Georgia, and Texas.
Jesus.
After the European shenanigans, Frank did not immediately reform, but instead worked at a kids' camp under false credentials. From what the FBI has said, Frank never did work for them either. This is aside from the other claims that Frank has made, including working undercover for the FBI, which is how he met his wife, according to him anyway. Frank has also said he was sent to a secret government laboratory for additional help. Well, that's the best one he's come up with so far, because if it's secret, then he can't...
That's right.
I can't tell you bullshit.
You can't debunk it. It's secret.
So, I'd like to add as the devil's advocate that it could be assumed the FBI and some of Frank's other victims perhaps have not entirely been honest about their dealings with Frank due to fear of embarrassment. I don't know.
Yeah, hard to say.
All right, but he could have maybe worked with the FBI a bit, but they're kind of like, oh, no, he didn't, because they just don't want to admit they kind of bungled up with him for so long. I don't know, though. Nonetheless, FBI agent Joe Shea has stated that him and Frank were never close. The last time they spoke was probably during a crime convention seminar in the 1980s. Apparently, Frank just walked up to him and said, hi.
Jeez.
boldly, to add more to the laundry list of lies, possible lies, Frank over the years has said he has never swindled individuals other than a high-value Miami prostitute, as highlighted in the film, which I believe was like Jennifer Garner's, like one of her first roles.
Yeah, I think it was.
Yep. This is where he gave her a $1,400 forged check in exchange for $1,000 worth of services. Not only did she take the check, but she gave him $400 in cash as change, netting Frank a hefty profit.
Oh my God.
Well, so we're taking his word for this.
Yeah.
So, according to Logan, however, Frank did swindle families in the United States and also in Sweden after he got out of prison in Europe. This, of course, financially harmed these families and left them feeling violated since he usually stayed with them. So, he's gaining people's trust and ripping them off. So, he's just a crap person.
He's just he's a sleazy, charismatic con man.
After the incidents in Sweden, Frank did return to the U.S., but even if he did escape, it was probably through the kitchen galley of the plane and not through the toilet, since this simply would have been too difficult to manage due to the sophisticated plumbing. I don't know, have you ever quickly tried to remove a toilet?
Not quickly, no, but I have removed the toilet before, and my first thoughts is there's not enough room for you to go through the floor, I mean, without making, causing some more demolition.
Well, maybe we'll do a video of that. We'll time it. Let's see how fast you can remove a toilet. Okay. In the end, Frank was rarely ever arrested on fraud charges. According to public records, Frank was arrested for vagrancy and grand theft auto more than any other crime. About the only thing that can be substantiated about Frank's claimed criminal career is that he did impersonate an airline pilot for a period. According to an article published in the Irish World and written by David Hennessy, there is one part of Frank's story that rings true, which is, and this is from the article, quote, "The tiny grain of truth, and catch me if you can, is that for a brief period in 1970, when Abagnale was 22 years old, he did dress as a Pan Am pilot for 3 months." So not forever and ever and ever, yada, yada, yada. Well, Frank also did forge in cash checks, but not for $2.5 million, as he has said before. Alan Logan has found proof that the amount of money Frank did swindle with his check scheme was closer to about $1,400.
Oh, yeah, there's a little bit of a difference there.
Small discrepancy.
Yeah.
So what is true about Frank's life? Well, as you have found out, listeners, it would appear very little of Frank's story likely happened. All of this has not deterred Frank's speaking career, however, since it's been reported that he makes between $20,000 to $30,000 per speaking engagement. So he's like Jordan Belfort now, basically.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Well, if anyone can sum up the motivations for these lies, Logan once again has another thought. Quote, "His fantastic story was a massive fabrication, and that is the biggest con the man ever pulled. Having people believe it," unquote.
He could sell it.
Yep. With all this in mind, it is hard to say what to believe. With that said, and as we come to a close, we must remember that Frank's supposed life is not one to envy by any means. He spent most of his youth being nothing more than a thief and a con artist, and even according to him, this is not a good life to live. What can be said that even if most of it is made up, he has told an interesting story and always kept us guessing. One thing is for certain about Frank's life, though, and that is he went on an unbelievable joyride, and he's been telling the amazing tale ever since.
He certainly has.
And that is the end of our story. What do you think?
Well, initially it takes you down the glorified Leonardo DiCaprio route, which is just a tale of fantasy, and you want to believe it to be reality, and it certainly seems so with the way it rolls out. But then, as you put there, I mean, on the other side of it, when you hear the actual real story, the more documented side that has, again, documentation to back it up, quite the opposite. I mean, it really kind of makes that Leonardo DiCaprio image fade away in your head a little bit.
I remember watching that movie as a kid, and I thought it was just the best thing ever. And I remember reading more up on him later on and reading about, the undercover FBI thing and escaping from the prison. I was like, wow, they left a lot out of the movie. They must just did that, for time constraints. And then I started discovering this stuff like where people are more recently are coming out and saying, I think he's just making it up, a lot of it anyway. And but a lot of these investigative journalists have said, and they're not knocking the movie. They said the movie, it's a very good movie, but it's largely fiction. That's just what you got to keep in mind.
Well, entertaining nonetheless.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, it's quite a story, quite an entertaining story, regardless of what was true and what wasn't. But
Yeah.
again, as you well put. I mean, it was not a glamorous lifestyle in the reality of things. Of what he did, starting off young and where he ended up.
Yeah. So how's that for a good start off to the season here, Adam?
I think that's a good kickoff there.
All right. Well, we have more to come, and hope you enjoyed that. And if you can, give us a comment. That helps us. I've been told it helps get the podcast in the algorithm more. So if you could do that, that would be great. And, of course, check out the other descriptions and stuff and the links that we have in the description box to take you to some other stuff we have. And we also have a Patreon, of course, and we appreciate any donations you give us because that helps us keep going. So with that said, we'd like to thank you for listening, and we have more to come. Sound good, Adam?
Sounds good. We'll see you on the next one.
All right. Signing out.